That's right, our very own Amie Latta.
This is
We've heard,
ridiculous.
we've heard a lot about you, Amie.
What?
We've heard a lot about you.
Have we?
We have. And welcome. Welcome. We are doing a live interview. And this week, actually, we're focusing on Amie and one of our staff. And we're looking forward to getting to know all of our program staff as we go forward. And so, Amie, how's it going there at home? I loved your home video last night. That was pretty cool.
Thank you. Thank you. That's typical of me, like every single night, trying to like
Yeah,
de-stress, get my knitting out, get my knit on. You know how
love
it
it.
is. Yeah.
Love it. That's so good. And that's it. You just got to get, I think this time of day, you just got to get your knit on, right? Just got to get it on. So, oh, we're seeing some laughters in there. That farmer life is laughing at your laugh, I think maybe.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah,
Known for my
nice.
laugh. You know that.
All right.
For sure.
Well, we got a few things. We're gonna do a few things.
All right.
I got the wrong sheet. I got the right sheet now, and we're gonna start off with just this random lightning round here with Amie. And so, Amie, I just want you to respond to this lightning round as we get to know you better. Mondays or Fridays?
Fridays.
Favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Invisibility or super strength?
Invisibility.
Okay. Morning or night?
Nighttime.
Interesting. Your favorite number?
14. I questioned
14.
that one. I really did. It was like a 4, a 7, or a 14. I wasn't too sure.
Interesting. Well, I guess a 14 would be like a double 7 put together. So
Yeah, it's like,
that
14
could
like
work.
doubles it up. Not too
Yeah.
sure.
I like
Some
it.
days
I
I'm a
like it.
7, some days I'm a 14. It depends on a scale to 1 to 10. Do you know what I'm saying?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So not on the sheet, but cow or pig?
Cow, because I like steak.
Nice. I wasn't sure because people can go with bacon on that one, right? So that's
Oh, that's
a
true.
good
I
one.
actually, you know what? I reject my first answer. I say my second one. I one up.
Wow.
I say bacon.
Okay then. Okay
Yes.
then.
Yes.
Blue or red?
Purple.
Mm.
Blue.
So that for those that will be watching this now currently, thanks guys for joining in. And for those watching in the future, there's Amie right there. She finds the compromise. She finds the solution that everyone wins. Because
Sure.
that's what we're about here, YFC. Everybody's a winner. So and we've got a few questions that came up because this interview has been posted earlier that you would be going live and we'd be seeing you in the living.
Here
Are
we
you
are.
really? Is this really live? Like, are you really alive?
I am as live as I can be.
Nice.
Mhm.
Nice.
Mhm.
That is excellent. I'm alive now as well. Our one furnace was not working in the cafe for the last 3 days.
Oh no.
So it was about 47 this morning. That wasn't good. But our heat's working again. So
Yeah. Good.
thank you, essential workers. Woo!
Yes.
Keeping us hot.
Clap that
Meals
out.
are going
Clap that
out.
out.
We got 62 meals going out today, so that's pretty cool.
Awesome.
So Amie, some questions for you.
Ready?
Is it true that you, Amie, have the world's best boss?
No. Next question.
Wow.
Yes.
All right. Well, is it true that skateboarders are the best part about working at YFC?
I would say that skateboarders are an essential breed to our youth culture that I still am trying to personally understand. But I think my like level of like understanding probably would go up if Jared actually taught me how to do skateboarding. I think then I would probably like them better. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But I understand that it's like, again, it's a special thing how those skateboarders work. I just don't understand skateboarding.
Well, it's a different kind of a culture, right? Like
Right.
it's more of a individual kind of sport, Really? I mean, it's not like you go tandem on a skateboard. I don't know, Jared maybe could respond to that with a
Maybe,
comment.
maybe when
You
we
can.
actually talk with Jared, maybe we could actually ask him how that works.
Maybe I could
But
be
I
the
think
first
from my
one.
perspective, I really like skateboarders because I think that they're really personal. I think a
Yeah.
lot of them are quiet. That's at least what I've seen, or if maybe that's just youth in general when they talk to me. But I do like the fact that skateboarders are always personable when they come into the youth center and always say hi and are at least willing to put up with my questions, which is nice.
Mm.
So that would
Mm.
be my answer. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. We see the deck has just commented and said that skateboarding is not a sport. How would you respond to that?
Um, I feel like it's a leisure activity, like a fun, like kind of like this is the way I do things, like just like going about my stuff. But
Mhm.
I think at the same time, it's interesting because I know that they have extreme sports like the skateboarding competitions and etc. So I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to that. But I find it interesting that the deck has said that it's not a sport. It's a lifestyle. That's right.
Okay. Okay.
I did.
Well, maybe we can
I was
just
like
put it
somewhat
out.
right there.
Maybe we need to put it out there to what other people think, though, right? Because that's a little bit of a biased perspective. Those currently online, would you say skateboarding is a sport or a lifestyle? Give us your response. We'd like to see how people respond to that. Is skateboarding a sport or a lifestyle? Let's see your response.
Do
All
do
right.
do 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 do.
All right, that's
No
all the time you
answers.
get. So apparently the deck wins. It's lifestyle. Okay.
Nice. Next question. It's a
So the next
sport.
question we got here. What has been the most difficult part of transitioning youth ministry while things have been in isolation? Because, I mean, there was a point where, for example, skateboarding, people could actually be at the deck skateboarding together, or at least in outdoor skate parks. And now they're not. Compass basketball could be actually competing, training together. Now they're not.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole engagement downtown hub, and the hub here was coming together as community. Now we're not.
Mm-hmm.
What's been the most difficult part, and what's going on there?
That and so much more. So much more. Just challenges around just how do we program and how do we reach youth in a virtual world. Not only was that like a challenge with kids being in tech and on screens, etc., and then even just getting them to come and be in community. But now it is what it is, being where we are with the current culture, and
Mm.
it's been difficult. It's been really difficult. I know from like a program side, trying to think outside the box and trying to find ways in terms of getting into virtual spaces with youth and being on top of social media and being able to connect and reach out to youth who we do know and who we potentially don't even know. It's been kind of this expanding our brains,
Mm.
thinking about, that ministry looks vastly different, but then yet the mission continues with everything that these kids need in the city. And I think you touched on it, right?
Yeah.
We're not able to do physical things. We're not able to eat together. We're not able to play a game together. And I think it's striving for those connections.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So what can people do during that? Like, what have you guys seen? Any things that seem to be helping with some of the isolating coping? Is there anything that's been helpful? I mean, there's been the virtual connections, but that goes so far. Like, is there other ways of connecting?
I think it's a difficult piece, right? Like I've been reflecting a lot about how people feel connected through virtual spaces, but then they can also feel disconnected at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Even in our staff meetings, connecting over Zoom or over FaceTime or even just over the phone continuously, there's still this like part where we feel disconnected. And I know that a lot of the youth and young adults who come to our spaces already feel disconnected from the world that they come from, but then they're longing for a connection. And then here we are in a virtual space trying to connect with them, and it's just a different type. And I think that as well, I think like when we talk about like meaning and being able to, you know, resonate with something that's like deeper in who they are, I think it's just harder to really be authentic and validating in virtual spaces. Whereas I was even sharing with someone the other day to buy a coffee for a youth, or buy a meal, or to say, hey, can I get you another glass of water? You know, in that way, it's a direct way of saying I care, but in an indirect way saying that, you know, I don't have to say as much, right? Whereas now in these like virtual spaces, we're trying to be, you know, more connected with the youth as best as we can, but it requires a lot more words.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, say, hey, let's go play this game, or let's like sit down on the couch and just like, you know, play spoons, or, you know, sit down and just like quickly chit chat here and there. Now it requires that deeper conversations that I think that us as youth workers are willing and excited to do. But then it also requires this other space of like vulnerability that I don't know if the youth or young adults ready to do that yet, right?
Yeah.
So it's a bigger question.
Yeah. It's been interesting. Some of the calls I was on today, they're talking about the whole Zoom, and while it's great to be connected virtually, that for a lot of people to all of a sudden be on a screen, and this is what you see, and you're this intimate, and you're now in my home, in my space, in my private world. I can cover things up a lot when I got my whole body language I can kind of block, and I don't get to block that anymore. So it's a pretty raw, open, trusting space, and it's hard just to get people to enter there if they're not used to this kind of engagement.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too is like, you know, do youth have phones? Do they have computers? Are they sharing with their parents? When we have the spaces, they can show up and they can be in the space with us. But this is, again, just a different type, not saying it's, you know, hindering in any way specifically, but it's just a different type in terms of trying to reach out to the youth community.
Yeah, very cool. So another question that came out, and also I just kind of thought, all of a sudden Cyndi Lauper's in my head, you know, living in a virtual world, and I'm a virtual girl, although it was material.
I'm too young for that. I don't even know that song.
I was just thinking that's probably before your time, but
it is. Yes, it
is. You know that we are living in a virtual world, and I am a virtual girl. Well, that's material.
Sounds just like the song that I've heard on the radio before.
Down, down, down. Anyways, are you reading any good books between knitting? Hey, Jared, I am not showing my age. Okay, are you reading any good books right now? If so, I mean, actually, let's start there. It's a yes or no question. Are you reading any good books right now?
No.
Okay, well, then I don't bother asking you the rest.
I knit a lot. I knit and crochet quite a bit. That's like my decompressing every night. I need to do my knitting. But in saying that, I am somewhat of a nerd. But I do like to read. But I tend to read like articles and like blogs and stuff too. But
so are you admitting that you're a nerd? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I do enjoy
something I didn't know about you, so this is good. Good to know.
Yeah. And deep theological talks as well, with my husband a lot. And, you know, my husband reads quite a bit, and I get like the short synopsises of books. But I could probably give an exhaustive list if he was on this call. But two books that really inspired me, I actually brought them with me. Because I just in terms of like ones that I've enjoyed before. There's two, and I brought them with me. There's one that's called Now That I've Been Called. And it's a guide for women discerning a call into ministry. And I read it a couple of years back when I was deciding if I was going to go into ministry as a woman, and really enjoyed it, and kind of spurred me into some good questions around whether or not I had a space in ministry and what that looked like. And I would highly recommend that one. And then the other one that I'm reading is this one. I just picked this one up from, it's Daniel Strickland's new one, Better Together. How women and men can heal the divide and work together to transform the future. Haven't finished it, currently reading it, excited. Just looking at, you know, how we as a collective whole can be able to, as a church, like reach out to the community and just work together, serving for God and serving alongside each other, and how we complement one another in both of our giftings that God has given us.
Very cool. What would you say would be a highlight so far that has maybe busted a thought or a myth that you were taught to believe of women in ministry? I mean, definitely there's a lot of talk, and there still is, so I don't want to offend anyone that may watch this saying, well, I believe differently than Coolidge. That's good. You know, I give you space to be wrong. But looking at women in ministry, what is something that you felt has been freeing for you in ministry, that has been validating of actually God's complete calling in men and women in ministry, both end? But
yeah, I think the biggest thing is like recognizing people's giftings. I believe that God has called each one of us to serve this world, and how we're essentially able to express that is going to look vastly different. So I think the biggest part for me as I've been on this journey is remembering those who have validated my gifting, that I believe that God has given me, specifically around, you know, listening to people, speaking into people's lives, you know, organizing things, spending time with people, feeling that non-judgmental component continuously when I'm meeting with others, and then having other people call that out in me and like validating what that is. I've constantly been reflecting and trying to impose that on other people too, and validating for them too, the call on their lives. And I think another big component too is just examples as well. You know, growing up, I didn't have many women examples for me who were serving either at a church or a parachurch organization, or what it looked like in terms of how, as a woman, do I serve. And for myself, I found that the examples really then put me into what I could limit or potentially put myself in a box. And so I think as we look at, like, you know, how people are oppressed in our society, we want to provide new and different examples of how God is using other people and highlighting them in their lives, because they too are being called and they are unique in their own identity in Christ.
That's awesome. And I think that's the key, is having the balance of men and women role models. And that's what I love seeing in the ministry between our volunteers and our staff. And even ethnic diversity is so important, that every young person needs to be able to identify and connect with that role model, and not have other people almost making them their projects and trying to fix them or mold them into their image. But actually have proper role models that are both gender and ethnic connected. I think is so important in our community and faith.
Yeah, like I had this one pastor in Toronto, and she said to me, you know, I was finishing up my seminary degree there, and she was saying to me, we went up for coffee, and you know, she said to me, why don't you go like just full force into ministry? And I said, because I don't know if I'm going to be good at it, and I don't know like what it's going to look like, and you know, just going into this unknown part. And she just said to me, she's like, you won't be happy if you don't do it. And she just said it so directly. And she was just challenging me. She was just saying that, like, in her own position, she found that she had to constantly educate herself and like get more degrees. And, you know, she even herself was thinking about going to get her PhD. But I think it gives an example of, she was using it as an example of basically, if you don't feel like you have an example and it's not easy to attain something, you're going to continuously strive for something more, that's beyond you, and make yourself the best version of what you could potentially be. But in that, you then are feeling like, oh, it's never enough, right? So again, I come back to that piece of a validation of like, you are enough already, and that God's already called you and has already qualified you in who you are before any of this. And I think we as human beings need to be validating that in people, so they're not constantly wondering, am I enough? Am I enough to complete ministry? Am I enough to even reach these youth? And you know, I think of a couple of people who we have serving at YFC, and, you know, speaking to them about, you know, whether or not they have a call into ministry, and how they just want to serve. Like, they just want to be a part of the community. And it's like, you know, do I have any gifting? Do I have any, like, do I have anything to give? You know, whether they think that they're too old, you know, it's exciting because it's, these youth, they just want somebody who, again, would just want to validate who they are, and validate that, you know, God loves them, and that God really does care about what they're going through, and that they too care.
That's awesome. And just as you're saying, that Ephesians 2:10 comes to mind, right? That we are his beautiful masterpiece, created in Christ Jesus to perform the good works he prepared in advance for us to do. It's that whole, it's not about doing to be good enough. He already created us. In him, we're already that masterpiece. We're already beautiful. We're already value. And we just get to do the works that he already created us for us to do. So yeah, it's not, we overstress so much of that. So yeah, that's so good. Now, on a lighter note, a question came through. What is your favorite yarn? Inquiring minds want to know.
Man, for my knitting and crochet and yarn community, here it is. Okay, I've done pretty much every single type of yarn there is. I enjoyed for a long time thick yarn, but
what kind of yarn?
Like heavy, thick yarn, like thick yarn. Yeah,
I've seen your thick yarn. You've got a stack of it here.
Yes, I do.
2 inches thick.
So yeah, like I like being creative in that way, and like teaching other people what that looks like. But lately I am into a sock yarn, weight yarn, where I'm making shawls and scarves and such, and quite enjoying that, mainly because I'm able to put the projects in a small bag and carry it with me everywhere I go in my work bag. Every day, everywhere I go, I knit. Yeah, that's a thing.
Very cool. That's so cool. And it sounds like you've got a few people that are coming into this. Is it a crochet club that you've created online?
Yep. Tonight at 7:30, we got 5 young women who are coming, and
that's awesome.
We're going to be making granny squares. And
who?
Granny squares.
Granny squares. They said gray squares. That's just a color, right? So granny, gray, and you know.
Yeah. So we've given out yarn and crochet hooks, and gonna make granny squares, which are like about this big in size. Pretty simple to make. And then at the end of all of this craziness, put them together and make blankets that we can actually keep, which is good, or use as a fundraiser. We don't know yet. So
very cool.
Yeah,
that sounds like
this
a lot
is
of fun.
Another way of trying to connect through something.
Yes. That's so good. That's so good. Now, I just noticed you've been doing a pretty good job. I haven't been doing as good a job of not touching your face.
Yeah, I'm a face.
I realize I keep going like this. I was like, that's gonna do it. But it's this corona hair that's growing on me, right? It's just
that is definitely hair, for sure.
I just let it grow out until I can get it cut by someone who may know how to cut it. But it should be fun.
Just buzz it.
Gonna get the flow. So good. And they're gonna just comb over. I think Jared's accepted the comb over opportunity, so we'll see. All right. Well, Amie, thank you. This has been time again. We're going to be every week interviewing another staff person, I think is the plan, and just getting to know, get up close and personal. And did I hear rumor right that it might be Jared coming up?
It's Jared next week.
Jared
Cheers.
next week. So we're going to learn a little bit more about this whole little skate lifestyle. And Mr. Jared, that should be a lot of fun. And but Amie, thanks for being our first at this as we learn how
You
to
are
do.
welcome, James Coolidge.
Mm, mm. I hope you enjoy your knitting today.
Thank you.
Your crocheting.
Thank you.
And if I was a woman allowed to be part of this women's club, I'm not saying that crocheting is women's work because I do know how to crochet. I would be part of the club. I can knit as well.
Love it.
So I rug hook as well.
Respect this one up for you now. Wow.
Right?
Wow.
Right? But I can't skateboard. Jared can attest to that. So I can join your clubs, not necessarily Jared's.
All right. All right.
Amie, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, stay well. And prayers with you. And
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.